Suppose you want to create this young lady, but you want her to be positioned in an intense boxing match with this girl. This is two consistent characters in the same scene where facial expression and pose are both important. I'm sure all of you who use Midjourney have struggled generating images like this. More than that, if you're working on a project with any complexity, you'll likely need multiple images of your characters, each with a consistent scene to match. Maybe you'll be adjusting the angle or showing off your characters performing different actions. For me, I'm generating the same people in the same boxing match so that it looks like the same ring with the same lights in the background. But I still want every result to be an entirely new image. Accomplishing this is the promise of Midjourney's CREF feature, but doing it with your own characters takes a nuanced understanding and, honestly, a bit of luck. By the end of this video, you'll be able to do everything I already showed you so far, as well as generate the same believable character at every stage of life. That way, you can watch your AI creation as they grow up and then grow old. Let's get into it. Of course, before you do anything, you need to understand how Midjourney treats image references in the first place. Midjourney has three kinds of image prompts. The first one is the classic and original, the Midjourney image prompt. When you upload an image and select this, Midjourney simply encodes all of the visual information as an adjustment to the prompt you've written. Behind the scenes, the image was turned into tokens, or tokenized, and turned into a series of values that Midjourney understands as visual data. This happens to your reference image in the same way your prompt gets tokenized before Midjourney generates anything from that. This is important to understand, so let's look at an example. If you upload an image of a galaxy and you combine it with a simple prompt like handsome man, you get something like this matchup. Uploading the image was a shortcut to writing the words that describe the color, look, and feel of a galaxy backdrop. If you experiment with this kind of prompt a lot, you'll notice that Midjourney will particularly try to match the colors and brightness of your image prompt. But really anything from this reference could end up in your end result, which is why we get the guy from our written prompt, but stars from the uploaded image, some mix of the color of lighting between the two of them, and then Midjourney adds this painted style, which must have been chosen by their aesthetic engine as the most coherent way to combine these very separate ideas. That brings us to the second type of image prompt, style reference, which was designed to encode only the style information from your uploaded image. So, if an image prompt gets tokenized and used in its entirety, a style reference is a subset of an image prompt, where any tokens that relate to the subject, background, or content are removed, and all that's left is kind of the essence of how an image looks. It doesn't really make sense for Midjourney to create a handsome man in the style of a galaxy. You just get these kind of purpley photographs, and that makes sense, right? Because Midjourney is trying to interpret the style of this galaxy image, and applying it to the prompt of handsome man doesn't really mean anything. The galaxy is a photograph, this is a photograph, I guess, but the point is, the galaxy and stars aren't a part of these images at all. The subject hasn't become a part of the prompt. Those tokens from the image weren't used. To take advantage of style reference, instead, you could take this image as a style reference, and you'll generate a matching watercolor of your man. Whereas if you had used it as an image prompt, the style and the color sure would have come over, but also the subject, which was these concentric rings, as well as this watery effect here. All of that would have made it into the image. If that all makes sense, the third reference type is, of course, the one you care about, character references, or CREF. This option is its own subset of tokenized image data. Instead of style, Midjourney tries to pass the tokens from your image that describe things like the face shape, the eye color, the hair color, the clothing, various textures, and basically any visual information that makes a specific person look like that person. It's useful because the finer details of a face are hard to put into words. Language is really not an efficient way to describe the visual qualities that make a person look unique. and so we use images instead. But it's still input to output, prompt to result. So to make the characters in our output as consistent as possible, we'll need to limit our variables. To start us out, I have 5 powerful techniques to do exactly that. If you integrate these into your workflow, getting consistent characters will become trivial. First, a fully defined prompt is perfect for eliminating randomness, since Midjourney's aesthetic engine won't try to fill in the details and override the facial features from your CREF. Next, you can set your seed to any consistent value. I just put --seed1 as a parameter, and suddenly the randomness you get from seed isn't a factor anymore. Also, during the generation, make sure the character features you care about are as prominent in the image as possible. This way, the CREF features apply specifically to your character, and Midjourney can assign the maximum amount of GPU time to getting your character right. Next, you need to use multiple images as your CREF. One is not enough. Midjourney is not perfect in the way it understands the tokens from your images, so uploading more references is kind of like a more specific prompt. Without at least 3, I tend to find my character is underdefined. It's kind of like writing a short prompt if you're just using text. Midjourney makes the characters look fine when there's only one, but it changes way more things than I wanted it to, making my character not consistent. Lastly, I highly recommend a prompt framework. The CREF is just a part of your prompt. The text you write also matters a great deal. Think about it. If you generate your character in the gym, they'll end up looking more muscular, but if you put them in a fashion show, they'll look slimmer and have a ton of makeup on. If you write your prompts in a way that separates the characters from the scene they're in and clearly defines what they look like, then every new scene you put your character in, you can use that same prompt framework, and that way you can get your inputs consistent every time, thus achieving the same character. Now, doing all 5 of those things might sound kind of challenging, but for the rest of this video, I will break down everything you need to know and make this as simple for you to do as possible, starting with creating references in the first place. If you're working on creating a character from scratch, as I mentioned, you'll need multiple references for Midjourney to use, and those references should all look the same as each other. But it's kind of like a catch-22, isn't it? You can't get a consistent character unless you already have a consistent character and you can use them as references. It's a problem. But luckily, I have a couple tricks for you that'll make this super easy. The first option is basically no work at all. I've created a custom GPT that writes a prompt to generate a grid of character references based on your idea. Maybe you want to create an old man professor with a gray afro. You tell that to my GPT, link in the description, and it gives you a prompt for that grid. Copy it into Midjourney, click generate, and immediately you've generated 4 grids with a bunch of variations of that same character. One of these will be perfect for the references. You can click here to upscale it. I use upscale subtle. And remember, these images do not have to be perfect. These are inputs. They are just tokens describing things about a person. You get your end result when you apply them to your final prompt. Midjourney just isn't awesome at generating 6 versions of a person at a time. It's optimized for one person with clear visibility of their face. Even though this looks a little wonky, it's pretty good. And once you have your upscaled version, you just need to break it out into individual CREFs. To do that, I just use the snipping tool. So on Windows, hold the Windows key, Shift, and then tap S. On Mac, it's Command and Shift, then the number 4. Use your mouse to select the corners, then copy and paste the snipped image into the Midjourney prompt bar. I repeat that process for all the versions of the character that I like, and voila, I have 5 images I can use as CREFs. I just click this little person in the bottom left, and I'm all set up to create a character. This method is perfect for relatively simple images, but if you have more complex characters, maybe pointed ears, specific kinds of horns, or a necklace that you need Midjourney to get right, there is a brand new option that's been enabled by Midjourney's new editor. Instead of generating all of these characters at once, you can start with just a single image of your character, which makes it the highest quality and potentially gives you the opportunity for the most interesting character design. Once it's generated, copy the image, and then in the editor, change the aspect ratio so that another character fits next to them. Then you'll want to write a prompt that describes the same character being shown from 2 different angles in the same image in sharp detail. You can erase a bit of one side to make sure the character fits, and then you want to paste in the original image and set it as a character reference. Then you're ready to generate it. Once you have something, we're back to the snipping tool. Use it to copy any of the new versions that you like, then go back to the editor and add the character reference here as well. And now you just repeat this in the editor until you have all the references you need. Between those 2 methods, I've created a whole cast of characters that I can use in any image I want to create. I save them under this Organize tab in a folder called Characters. That way, I can easily find one that I like, click here and then here to copy the prompt, and use the crefs stored in my clipboard to use in the editor or when generating a new image in the prompt box. But no matter how you create your references, cref can throw off your scene as it gets more complex. To give you an example, if you want your character to be skydiving, and you write a simple prompt and just add your cref to it, you get the most basic result you can imagine. And your character looks like she's just showed up for a photo shoot and there's a green screen behind her with the sky in it. If she was skydiving, her hair should be whipping around, her face should be distorted from the wind, and she should look exhilarated. But Midjourney makes her this flawless, pristine version, and her expression is almost bored. Meanwhile, the same exact simple prompt without a cref generates this, meeting all of the criteria I'd expect perfectly. My recommendation, if you're generating anything more complicated than a regular photo shoot, would be to generate a close proximity of your character and then use the editor to apply the cref. I call this kind of image that has the right details but wrong character my template scene. So to generate your character in a scene like this, you would still copy your character reference to use, but now write a prompt that describes everything you care about for the scene. Only once you have a template image you like are you ready to swap out the character for the next step. Go to the editor, erase out the bits of the face that don't match the character you're trying to create, add the cref in place, and generate the scene. Look at the difference here. This is a fantastic result, and because Midjourney is best at generating people and faces when they're close up, sometimes you might need to head back to the editor and zoom out on the scene. That'll be true whenever you want them to appear at more of a distance. But even if you take this template approach, you'll still find that Midjourney starts changing your character in ways you didn't want them to. The solution that really helps is implementing some sort of prompt framework. Getting this worked out will be crucial for getting your character truly consistent. In theory, what you want to do is make sure your text prompt is always using the crefs in the same way, no matter what your scene or situation is. When you have simplified, short prompts, sometimes your character will turn out airbrushed. In some scenes, they might look like they have freckles or imperfections. Sometimes they'll look toned, and other times scrawny. As you can see, the text of your prompt has a major effect on what your character ends up looking like, even if you're using the same crefs. And so, if you have a method for writing a prompt that gives Midjourney an idea of how freckled, toned, and stylish your character is, regardless of the scene they're in, Midjourney will be much more likely to match the character from one image to another. So, how do you do that? What are you actually supposed to do? The simplest and easiest way is to cheat off my homework. That same GPT we used earlier has a built-in prompt framework that leans in the direction of a natural photorealistic look that I really love. It meshes a description of your character with your background in a way that, in my experience, Midjourney treats similarly every time. So, if you want to do that, open up the GPT, describe or upload your character, then ask it to generate prompts for scenes of your character. I'll do all 5 of the ones I showed you earlier. Taking a prompt and just pasting it into Midjourney will create very consistent characters, but they'll probably all have the same basic, straightforward angle and simple expression. But if you apply these prompts to the editor method of adding a consistent character into a template scene, you'll find the results end up being much more consistent than before. And this way, they look amazing every single time. But that's the framework that works for me, and it might not suit your needs. So instead, you might have to create your own. To do that, I would set the seed and use a character reference you like. Then it'll be a process of trial and error. Try a prompt, notice how it affects the character and the scene, and you'll make changes and try different situations. I suggest experimenting, playing around until eventually you have a knack for writing prompts the same way for characters that match the style and vibe of the image you personally love to create. Nail it down and start using it every time because, like we've seen, getting this input consistent is the most important thing. If you've gotten this far in this video, you're ready to have fun with this stuff. Everything so far has been set up, but now you're ready to use it, to put your character into real and useful scenes. Most importantly, multiple characters into the same scene. This method follows logically from what we've done. We can do our boxing examples from the intro. Just like for complex scenes, we'll first generate a template scene that seems to include characters that look something like we have. This can be a somewhat complicated prompt, but write it up and try to optimize the composition and style of the image so it looks basically how you want. Next, in the editor, we'll start by putting our first character into the scene. Just like before, we'll do it by pasting the CREF images and then creating a prompt that fits into our framework, either on ChatGPT or by writing it ourselves. And then generating, replacing the most prominent character with the one we care about. Then we can repeat those same exact steps. We can do this so that one character is prominent or the other, or we can start again and make it so they're both in equal prominence side by side. All we have to do is make sure we erase enough so that Midjourney understands the size your character needs to be and the direction they need to be facing, but not so little that the character from the original image never gets replaced and the likeness just never works out. This is possible to do for any scene involving multiple characters. You can even use the pan feature built into the editor and a bit of Photoshop to create lineups of your entire cast of characters into a beautiful panorama like this. But if you're using these images to tell some kind of story, matching the characters isn't enough. You want your scenes to match too. Again, we have an easy way and a hard way to do this. The easy way is perfect for relatively simple scenes where consistency is pretty basic. If you want trees or rocks to look like they're in the same area, for example. To do this, I make sure to describe the background in my prompt when generating my template scene. And then I toss in a style reference from the original scene that I want it to match with. From there, you can follow the same steps we've just followed to generate scenes with matching backgrounds. But that's only matching-ish. If you want perfect backgrounds that look like the same tree has moved from one part of the image to another, or a wall that needs to have a specific painting on it, or a castle in the distance needs to look just like it looked when it was in the distance in the other scene, well, to do that, we're going to have to take a more careful approach. And that is going right back into the editor. Before, we've created our template scenes by writing a single prompt and letting Midjourney generate it. But for this level of detail, we need to create that template scene in the editor itself. You have options for exactly how that works, but in essence, if you generate a scene of a conversation happening where something in the background or foreground needs to match perfectly, you can generate that thing first and then use the editor to place it where it needs to be and generate your scene template with it already there. If you need the thing to be from another angle, easy. Generate it in the editor from 2 angles in the same image, just like we did when we were creating our character references. Then, erase the one you no longer need for the new image. Sure, this can be slow and tedious, but it's also insanely powerful if you get good at it. Okay, we're ready for the last treat I promised you at the beginning of this video, and that was visualizing the same character at every age. With what you've learned about CREF so far, can you think how that might be possible? When most people guess, they think I lowered the character reference weight with --CW, and then in my prompt, I just described them as older or younger. But in my experience, that method sucks. The age of the character barely changes, or they totally change how they look. Instead, I created that montage by slowly adding and removing image references to create a gradient of possible ages. If you understand the tokenization process, this makes a lot of sense. I generated a grid for a young woman, and then I generated a similar grid for an old lady, and then again for a kid, and finally a baby. Stages of life where people look very, very different. But the way I made it seem reasonable was because I filled in all the years in between by mixing and matching these character references. By starting with several reference images of the baby and slowly adding more reference images for older versions of the character and taking away reference images from the younger ones, you can watch this lady age in front of your eyes. This is just the beginning of what's possible. Please, give some of this stuff a try and let me know what you figure out how to do. Midjourney is starting to become the art tool I always wished it would be. I hope you guys enjoy. Good luck generating, and I'll see you in the next one.